Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. So I would like to show you the new URs from the pack. Usually I do that in the intro to these kinds of videos here, but Master Duel's really been struggling these last couple of updates, and after looking at the new URs in the shop, I kind of got kicked out, and as you can see, the game will not let me back in. However, I was able to get in for just long enough to actually see what all of the new URs from this latest pack are. So we're going to review all of them here as usual. I'll tell you how many copies you need and how good they're going to be. We have a lot of staple cards to cover in this pack, so we're definitely going to want to hop right on into it and make sure that we know just what to get from this latest selection pack. Favorite Hero Shining Flare Wingman is a new hero monster, but you're actually going to see it way more often outside of hero decks, and that's because if we take a look at the fusion materials, they are one fusion monster plus one face-up monster on the field. So, as a lot of you are probably guessing, that's right, super polymerization. Any deck that uses it could, in theory, make use of Shining Flare Wingman, the favorite hero version here, that is. However, I think it's mostly going to be used in decks that are playing Super Poly that already inherently play fusion monsters. While there are a lot of opponents out there that are on fusion decks, and you could consider this a more, I guess, generic Super Poly target for any deck, it is a lot more effective in a deck where you're playing fusion monsters, because that basically turns Super Poly into an indestructible effect that can remove any face-up monster from your opponent's side of the field. Non-targeting, non-destruction, very effective way to remove your opponent's stuff. So I would definitely recommend picking up a copy if you have any amount of decks that play Super Poly and already play fusion monsters, which could be Branded, it could be Dracotale, it could even be something like Magistus Fairy Tale. There are a lot of options in the current meta where you could play Favorite Hero Shining Flare Wingman. And again, because there are so many fusion decks in the meta right now, you could easily consider this a deck where you're not even playing fusion monsters, assuming you have the extra deck space. It's kind of like Sea Monster of Theseus in that regard, where it's like a Super Poly target against a certain subsect of matchups. Whereas, of course, Sea Monster of Theseus is for Cool Tunes specifically. In any case, you should definitely pick up one copy. Whether you're playing Hero or not, as long as you own Super Polys, you will be making use of this. GMX Velox is the boss monster of the new GMX archetype, which is centered around dinosaur monsters and fusion summoning. I do have to be upfront with you, when it comes to GMX as an archetype, I don't even know if I can really call it lower rogue. I think it is kind of the definition of a casual archetype. I scoured a couple of different sites looking over even regional top results. I couldn't find a single one for like a pure GMX deck. Now that said, GMX Velox and some of the GMX cards do still find a home, mostly in just regular, more generic dinosaur decks, offering some fusion summon options for, again, just the more generic dinosaur deck. I've also seen it come up in for hire before, which also makes sense because they also, again, have multiple dinosaur monsters that are pretty important to the archetype. So as an engine, GMX isn't horrible. As an engine, I'll call it lower rogue, but as a pure deck, I genuinely cannot recommend trying to play this deck pure. I don't think you'll have very much success with it. So I'll list one copy because I don't really see any deck using more than one copy. In a pure GMX deck, if you really want to go for it, maybe you'd want a second, but I'll only recommend one. And even then, I'll actually probably end up putting 0 to 1 here because that's still really optional whether or not you choose to play it in dinosaur or for higher decks. If you're thinking about GMX as an archetype in general, again, I would personally not necessarily recommend it. Darklord Eveningstar is a new fusion monster for the Darklord archetype, and it's actually a pretty good one at that, allowing you to set not only a Darklord spell, but also a Darklord trap directly from your deck. So it's a double search that also circumvents cards that stop searches like Ash Blossom, or, cards that say you can't add cards from deck to hand. Like Joel and Lockbird, if you're under that, you could still, of course, set them, which is really nice, and again, makes this a really solid card, in addition to having just a really relevant on-board quick effect as well, meaning it can be added to your end board to give you even more disruption. Darklord, I did actually find, had a couple of regional tops outside of Genesis format. Just some tournament showings in general, and from what I can tell looking at those deck lists, it tended to play 2 to 3 copies, which makes sense again, given how this is not only a great extender, but also a really good end-board / disruption piece as well. So yeah, I'll recommend 2 to 3, and I think Darklord is going to make for a pretty solid rogue deck. I don't think it'll be tiered, but I do think it will have a nice niche here in the current Master Duel meta. All right, El Shaddoll gets a new boss monster, Meshahrail. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. But yeah, it's a pretty solid monster. It's 3 fusion material requirements, so it's a Shaddoll monster, a dark monster, and an earth monster. But not only does it have some protection from activated spell trap effects, as well as, you know, monsters with a level or rank lower than 10, but it can also add any Shaddoll or Void card, Shaddoll card or Void spell or trap card from deck to hand. And not only that, it's also got a graveyard effect to special summon a Shaddoll monster from your graveyard. So yeah, if you're playing Shaddoll, it makes for a very nice addition. And I saw pretty much every Shaddoll deck that was using it that I could find was on 2, if not 3 copies. Now, how much better does this new support make Shaddoll? I think it is still ultimately going to be a rogue deck, but I also think it's still a pretty solid one. Of course, it still has the ability to turbo out stuff like Window, which is very relevant, and Shaddoll is still, of course, a great engine to be used alongside stuff like tier limits. So, yeah, from what I can tell, again, from more dedicated Shaddoll decks tend to be playing this one, but like I said, 2 to 3 copies, which makes sense because it's got 3 very relevant effects, whether you want to use it as a towers, as an extender, or as an extender that searches, or an extender that revives from the graveyard, because it can do both. So very nice tool. Even though it doesn't make Shaddoll like a tiered deck or anything, it's still a very welcome addition. Dominus Spark is one of the many new staple cards being introduced in this pack. It is joining the ever-prominent lineage of Dominus hand trap cards, and this one can also be used from the hand if your opponent has activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard. This is pretty noteworthy because means it can be used even on your own turn, assuming they use like a hand trap or, again, some kind of graveyard effect. It has the ability to banish a monster that is your opponent controls. It does target, and then if you have no trap cards in your graveyard, your opponent can special summon from the hand. Now that might sound like a pretty big drawback, but I think that really just means this card has to be timed well, right? The timing that you would want to use this card most obviously is when you know your opponent has no monsters in hand, if they don't have any cards in hand at all, or if it's only 1 or 2 spell or trap cards they've searched and you know what they are. But more than that, you could also simply use it at a point when your opponent summons either a key monster to their combo line to, you know, stop the combo line right there, to cut it off right there, or you could even use it during the end of your opponent's turn or right before they make a negate to remove one of their end board pieces. And here's the thing, the later you use this card, the less likely they'll have a relevant extender or other starter in their hand, meaning that there are a lot of times where you could use this to remove one of your opponent's end board pieces, and if they get to summon anything, it's like a hand trap, right? It's optional, so your opponent could just choose not to summon the hand trap, but there's a lot of really good opportunities to use this card. So again, that drawback might look pretty severe, but I think it's actually totally fine in a lot more scenarios than you might think. Now, of course, the most important aspect of this card, like any Dominus card, is the attribute restrictions when used from hand. This one cuts you off from earth, water, fire, and wind, which is a lot. However, there are still a lot of decks out there that can make really good use of it. Some of the most notable ones are Branded, often runs or only needs to use the effects of dark or light monsters for any of its given plays. More than that, there's also Mitsurugi. Now, obviously, if you're on certain variants of Mitsurugi, you might not be able to use it, but you know, even Ryziel Mitsurugi, I believe, if I remember right, Detonator is light, so you could make use of this in a lot of Mitsu variants, whether it's pure or, if you want to try it, even Ryziel as well. Rocket is an archetype that makes good use of it. Malice, Odeon already plays all the other Dominus cards, so you'll definitely see it used here as well. There are a number of decks, Orcust, another one. Yeah, there are a number of decks that can definitely make some pretty good use of Dominus Spark. And again, it might not look like the strongest effect at a glance, but I do think it will end up being really impactful. And any deck that can make use of it, even potentially, should definitely look to at least try it out, if not commit to just playing like a playset. I'd say 2 to 3. Running 1 copy of a Dominus card feels really weak given how restrictive the in-hand effect can be, but yeah, definitely pick up a playset of this if you play like any amount of dedicated light or dark decks. Solemn Accusation is yet another one of these Solemn counter trap cards, and it is debuting in this set. This is another one that I've seen people refer to as a staple, but I'm not as convinced of that. See, the thing is about this card, it really only negates spell and trap cards, right? And while that is generally useful, I'm not saying that's bad or anything. I think the average deck that's looking to play a Solemn card really would look first to Judgment or even Warning, which stops summoning effects, right? Or summons themselves. Or either that or Strike, which can stop monster effects, I believe. But Accusation is specifically spell or trap cards. So from what I can tell in my research, the only decks that really consistently make use of it are back row decks, because the things that most often threaten, face down cards are going to be spell or trap cards, namely spell cards, stuff like Heavy Storm and Harpy's Feather Duster. So in my research, it was mostly Odeon, stuff like Labyrinth and Stun. These back row based decks were the ones that tended to make use of it. So if you play a back row based deck, then yeah, you could definitely look at Solemn Accusation as a really solid addition for your deck. Again, you're not only negating cards that threaten your back row. Obviously, every deck to an extent plays some amount of spell or trap cards, but if you're looking for Solemn cards and you're not on a back row based deck, I think I'd actually recommend some combination of Judgment, Strike, and potentially even Warning before Accusation. So that's kind of where I stand on that. I guess, again, if you are a dedicated back row deck player, definitely pick up a playset of this, or at least 2. But if not, I would honestly not necessarily go out of your way to craft a full playset just yet. Maybe in the future if you need it, but don't feel like it's a staple you have to pick up today, again, if you don't already play a bunch of back row decks. Forbidden Crown is quite possibly the single most significant addition from this selection pack. This is a quick play spell which applies a myriad of effects to any one face-up monster on the field. This card does not target, by the way, similar to Droplet. And also similar to Droplet, neither player can activate monster effects in response to this card's activation. It only protects from monsters, unlike Droplet, which, depending on what you send, could also protect from spell or trap cards. But obviously, being unrespondable by monsters is still really, really good. Now, the effects that are applied to any one face-up monster are: its effects are negated, it cannot attack, cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects, unaffected by activated card effects except its own, cannot be attributed, and cannot be used as material for a Fusion Synchro, Exceed, or Link Summon. So the first and most obvious use case for this is against one of your opponent's monsters that they're trying to use as like a starter, or even just at any point during their combo line, right? Not only can you negate the effects, but then it can't be used as a material either, which is kind of 2 ways that it screws over your opponent. And they also can't even attack with it, so even if it is like a monster with higher attack points, it can't then threaten your board. Now, you do have to be careful if you use this against one of your opponent's monsters on your own turn, because of course then that monster won't be destroyed or affected by any activated card effects, essentially becoming a kaiju. However, in turn, that's also how you can use this card on one of your own monsters, right? During your opponent's turn, let's say they're trying to, board wipe you or move to battle phase swinging for lethal, you can just pick your biggest monster, preferably one that's already used its quick effect if it's got one, and then you turn that into a towers that can't be destroyed or affected by any activated card effects. So it's a really nice way of saving yourself as well as potentially screwing over your opponent. It's a very modular card in that regard, and I really like cards that are skill testing in this way. I think an effect that could be beneficial regardless of whether it's used on you or your opponent's card given different situations really does make for a very skill testing card, and it will see a lot of play. Much like Droplet, you could play this in anything. I think it's even more true of Crown than Forbidden Droplet, because Remember again that Forbidden Droplet requires you to send at least one, but you'll often be wanting to send multiple cards to activate it. And this typically can only be used in decks that can afford to send multiple cards in that way. But Crown does not have any kind of a cost at all. You just activate it and it goes. So you could use this in just about anything. As far as what it is most often used in, you pretty much always see it in Sky Striker no matter what. But I've also seen it a lot in Magistus Fairy Tale. In my research, while that deck was coming out last month, I saw it in what felt like just about every Magistus Fairy Tale build. But I mean, again, it could be used in literally anything. So definitely not a card you want to skip out on. I would recommend going for, at the bare minimum, 2, but ideally a full playset. To be fair, not that many decks play a full playset, or again, from at least what I could tell in my research, but it's still not a bad idea to have 3 just in case, but at least 2, you want to get this for sure. Favorite Hero Flame Wingman is another new hero monster that's being added to this set, and it's actually, much like the other one, another fantastic super poly target, and probably where you're going to see it a lot more than in an actual hero deck. So this one, the material requirements are going to be 2 monsters with the same type but different attributes, and that is really going to make like kind of the trifecta between it, Mudragon, and Garura. Mudragon being same attribute, different types, and Garura being same type and attribute but different names. I will say that I think that Favorite Hero Flame Wingman in general tends to be one of the more difficult super poly targets to get out among those 3. Typically, monsters are going to share attributes a lot more often than they're going to share types. But of course, there are still going to be a lot of good situations where you can make use of this as a super poly target. That said, though, I don't know if I would actually recommend this at the same level as Mudragon and Garura. I still think those 2 are going to generally be a lot more useful. So this one, like, this is one of those where if you pull it or if you have 30 extra UR craft points, then it's definitely not a bad pickup at all. I would definitely hang on to it as a super poly target, but you're really only going to be using it in decks that have a ton of room in the extra deck. I'm talking like, 4 or 5 slots for super poly targets, because I would still play Mudragon and Garura definitely before Favorite Hero Flame Wingman, and I'd honestly probably play the Shining Flame Wingman favorite hero from this pack before this Flame Wingman as well. I think that a fusion monster plus any face-up monster on the field is actually a little bit less situational than 2 monsters with the same type but different attributes. However, this is definitely worth noting as a good super poly target. Again, if you happen to pull it or have some extra craft points, definitely not a bad pickup, but I wouldn't expect to use it quite as frequently as other super poly targets. GMX Researcher Selande is going to be another new card for the GMX archetype, and yet again, I honestly have to just be straight up with you all here. I cannot recommend GMX as a pure archetype. That's why I don't even really have it listed among the decks that this will be used in, because I don't think a pure GMX deck will be competitively viable really at all, just from what I can tell in my research. That said, this card does still see a decent bit of play. However, it's going to be mostly in Dinosaur and for higher decks. This definitely does make quite a bit of sense, right? As it can special summon any level 3 or lower dinosaur monster directly from the deck, and that is definitely going to be how you most often end up utilizing this card. So, as far as how many copies are used, it really could be any number from 1 to 3, really 0 to 3, because even in Dinosaurs and for Hire, this is a very, very optional engine piece. It does have to be normal summoned to get the special summon from deck, and it is a warrior monster, so it doesn't really synergize with a lot of your dinosaur plays. And again, requiring a normal summon specifically is a little bit like not as great, but it's not terrible. If you play Dinosaurs or for hire, it might be worth looking into, but even then it's pretty optional in the grand scheme of things. Regulus, the Prince of Endymion. Funnily enough, just last week, I actually put out a video talking about the new Endymion support, not knowing it would be released in this pack. I also talk about Genea of the Ring and the Charmer Link 4, neither of which I believe are in this pack either. However, I do think that it's definitely worth mentioning for the Magis's Fairy Tale deck, just how good Regulus Prince of Endymion is going to be for that. Figured, of course, I'd mention it here as well. So this is actually going to be like a pseudo sort of starter for this new line of Endymion support. It doesn't really have anything to do with spell counters per se, like other Endymion cards, but this little bit of support revolves around this card here, Regulus, the Prince of Endymion. However, I wouldn't necessarily go all in on having this card be your main focus. Again, the main way you're going to end up using Regulus in this support is to help the Magis's Fairy Tale deck. It is going to be quite a big buff as far as upping the consistency and combo abilities of the deck. Pretty easy to get 2 level 4 spellcasters in play with this, which obviously will let you overlay into Witcat and get your Fairy Tale plays going. So yeah, if you're on Magis's Fairy Tale, would definitely recommend picking up 2 to 3 copies of this card. Funnily enough, it's not even super needed, as even though Regulus makes a great 1.5 card starter, Ver is the card that you really want to be able to search in order to get your Ver Lacrima Magic of Light. So this is technically very optional. Like, I'm gonna say 0 to 3 because you could easily play Magis's Fairy Tale without this card, but I kind of think there's no reason not to. And if you are gonna play it, I definitely recommend 2 to 3 copies. Again, check out my video. I'll go ahead and link it down below on this follow-up Endymion support. Ver, the Maid of Endymion, is a fantastic extender for the Magis's Fairy Tale deck. Now, obviously, she's going to work very well in Witchcrafter as well, being treated as a Witchcrafter card and adding Witchcrafter spell or trap cards. But in Magis's Fairy Tale, she can add Ver, the Lacrima of Light, and that will let you set up some Magis's plays, but more than that, it can also help you set up your Fairy Tale Witcat if you summon this, or search this rather, off of the Regulus effect, or rather Regulus searching the spell that searches this and then you summon. Not only do you get to search the Lacrima of Light, but then you also have 2 level 4 spellcasters in play, which again is a pretty easy Witcat right there. As mentioned when I talked about Regulus, I do have already a guide talking about these Endymion cards and their relation to Magis's Fairy Tale, which I'll go ahead and link down below if you want some more info there. You should typically not need too many copies of this card. 1 should suffice. Even then, I'll probably say 0 to 1 because she's pretty optional in the grand scheme of things, but I think that optimized Magis's Fairy Tale decks will be playing her, so I'll recommend like 0 to 1 for Magis's Fairy Tale. I guess for Witchcrafter, you could play even more copies. And she definitely, of course, would not be bad at all there. But I'm mainly focusing on Magis's Fairy Tale here when I say 0 to 1 copies. Void Unleashing is a powerful new spell card for the Shaddoll archetype. It allows you to add multiple Shaddoll cards from deck to hand, and then you even get to discard a card. So if you want your graveyard effects, then you get to set that up there as well. You might note that Void spell and trap cards tend to support Infernoid a lot more often than Shaddoll, and that is actually the case here as well, as you can banish this card from your graveyard and also search up Infernoid cards, meaning that you could potentially bridge between the 2 archetypes. I mean, they both like having their stuff in the graveyard a lot, so they both often mill from the deck to the graveyard. It's pretty easy to see how they could potentially synergize. Now, from what I could tell in my research, this new Shaddoll support really didn't actually support that combination of archetypes, at least not competitively. Haven't really seen any evidence of somebody doing really well with a Shaddoll Infernoid deck. Even just, you know, considering Shaddoll by itself, I really didn't seem to get that much of a buff from these new cards, but this card is definitely not bad at all, and if you are playing a Shaddoll deck, then yeah, you should definitely run it, but I can't really call Shaddoll any higher than Rogue. Infernoid would obviously be pretty interested in this card as well, although you can't really use the activated effect, only the graveyard one, unless you're attacking Shaddoll cards, which is kind of weird. I don't know, it is a little bit of a weird card. It's good, but it's a little bit weird. I'd mostly just focus on using it in Shaddoll, where it probably is going to be a 3 of, but again, I think Shaddoll is probably just going to end up being still pretty rogue after this new support. And unfortunately, as you can see here, I'm still struggling to log back into Master Duel. The game simply just won't let me, but we'll just go ahead and sign off here. Thank you all so very much for watching this pack guide. Super appreciate the support as always. We're going to move now to our outro. That way we can thank our YouTube members and Patreon subscribers for their excellent support as well. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which by the way is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.